Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll just add on from the honourable member of Morell-Donagh. In 2019, the British Columbia government took steps to end hidden ownership of real estate. At the time in BC, people could hide their ownership behind number companies, offshore and domestic trusts, and corporations. This makes enforcement extremely difficult. Question to the Minister of Agriculture and Land. Is it possible to hide ownership of real estate here in PEI?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Land.
Mr. Speaker, that's an excellent question, Mr. Speaker. And actually, the Finance Minister and I were we were planning to meet with the BC government, Mr. Speaker, our counterparts in March, and Mr. Speaker, that unfortunately had to be cancelled because we do have some similar interests in land use and Mr. Speaker, and we are continually to investigate some of the processes that we are going to take, whether that's empty house tax, something like that, Mr. Speaker, where we try to avoid that sort of a situation here on the island, Mr. Speaker. And as far as I'm aware, we don't think there's any hidden real estate as far as we are aware.
Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've been hearing about the Lands Protection 2.0 since September. It was a promise of this government in their platform. It was in your mandate letter as actually the top listed high on your priority list. I would assume that it's number 1 in the priority list. Given the fact that British Columbia has already implemented legislation to deal with situations like this, which is a good framework, and obviously you're aware of it, how is it that at this point in time you still haven't met with the British Columbia government? When were you made aware that the legislation was already there? And do you have legislation drafted that would be appropriate for Prince Edward Island?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Land.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. In January, I went to a federal, provincial, and territorial meeting in BC, Mr. Speaker, and I had a sidebar meeting with the Attorney General there, and we had this discussion. And when I came home, I met with the Minister of Finance on the island, Mr. Speaker, and we started this conversation, Mr. Speaker. And I know things seem quite normal now, but Mr. Speaker, there's been a few months of a world pandemic that we've just got out of a state of emergency, Mr. Speaker. Just got out of a state of emergency. BC has been dealing with the same thing. We will pick this up as soon as possible, Mr. Speaker, and address this situation. Thank you.
Member from Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To be honest, COVID-19 is not a good enough excuse to use. Back in November, on November 7th, you released a press release that stated that this government planned a fulsome review of land-related legislation in part of government's work plan to strengthen and modernize land use and ownership in Prince Edward Island. That was in November. You had a work plan back in November. Minister, will you please table that work plan no later than July 7th in this House?
The Honourable Member from Agriculture and Land.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Charlottetown, Victoria.